Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the AGL Android 18 and Krillin. This is the only unit I got on part 2 of the panel. But yeah, I think they're really good. I actually really like how they're designed to a certain degree. There are things I think could change, but I think it's really good. Joint Forces, Battle of Wits category lead 130%, greatly raises attack and defense for 1 turn, lowering enemy attack and defense, which is important and causes supreme damage to the enemy. Key +2, attack and defense of 180%, medium chance of evading enemy's attack, including super attack, that's 30%, chance of performing a crit and chance of evading enemy's attack plus 30%, and superheroes category allies key +1 when there's another superheroes ally attacking in the same turn. So this obviously ties them a little bit to the superheroes team, or at least to a team where you can fit another superheroes on, or have them at least appear in rotations in the team. What it does do, it gives them a 60% evasion and a 30% crit chance, which generally speaking, 60% evasion, not saying it makes them a god level evasion unit, but it makes them a pretty good one overall. They get an additional attack and defense up to 90% with each attack evaded, and then they get an additional attack and defense of 180% within the same turn before the character receives an attack. So this is interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit just now. Superheroes category allies attack and defense plus 50% for 2 turns when HP is 50% or more at the start of turn. Okay. In terms of build, this is where things are going to be interesting. Look, so for me, they have 30% crit. 30% crit is decent, but for me, personally speaking, I would say I would probably run them full evasion with additionals. Additionals is great. Listen, it helps you raise your defense, but also lowers the enemy's attack and defense, which could be crucial for certain fights. And then, of course, like I said, evasion does help them out. You know, if you get them 20 evasion, you know, they have 60% baseline, 20% evasion on their hit potential system, means that you're looking at roughly an effective 70% evasion rate, which I would say is pretty good. Now, the thing is with them, like I was saying before, if you read into their passive, they get an additional attack and defense of 180% within the same turn before the character receives an attack. Okay. If they evade, they will never receive an attack. Okay. Which means, right, that they will always have that 180% attack and defense up as long as they evade the attack. The moment they don't evade the attack, they're going to lose a lot of raw defense. Now, to their credit, they have a decent chunk with this active. They have a decent chunk of raw defense. I think we see in this video, their defense gets up to almost around 400,000. Now that is a little bit dependent on getting Cold Judgment. Well, I say a little bit, but it's quite dependent on getting Cold Judgment and Brainiacs active, because both of those links are very, very heavy. But Turtle School as well is also a very, very heavy link. So they have 3 defensively heavy links. So it is one of those situations where you can see them and go, wow, yeah, they look really, really, really crazy. Yeah, how do they look like that? But the thing is they have 3 huge defensive links, and they have a huge defensive buff occurring at the same time. Now, all in all, this makes them pretty good. Don't get me wrong, just because it's a bit conditional doesn't mean it's not good. You see them evading here, you see them hit 5 million, and what you don't see, and what is really the big and best part of them, is a 2-turn 50% attack and defense buff whenever your HP is 50% or more. Now, in hard content, you can fall below 50% HP. It's a lot easier to stay at 50% HP in easier content, mid level content, slightly earlier, higher level content. But it doesn't mean that 50% is impossible in hard content. In fact, I think the 50% mark is actually pretty reasonable. There'll be few times, yes, you will drop below 50%, of course, but it's not the end of the world. At least for me, I don't think it's the end of the world. So I think for me, that's definitely something where I'd say, okay, wow, this is looking good. These guys are looking good. Everything's looking great here. I'm very impressed. I think it's the utility, everything they put together, that is very, very good and very, very appealing. So for me, I like them a lot as a unit. link-wise, look, I think that's probably the most difficult aspect of them. It's always the most difficult aspect. Whenever a unit relies on Cold Judgment, Brainiacs, Turtle School, you want to prioritize these links, and you'll see that they are fairly difficult to get. They're not super duper easy. The one thing that I do like is that Krillin that I was pairing them with, that AGL Krillin. So he obviously isn't up to code right now, but he will be relatively shortly. I believe he gets an easy A, and that easy A makes him really quite solid. So yeah, I think really, really good. So look, I like these guys a lot as a floating support. I think they're great for the superheroes team. If you've got them, especially if you get like a dupe or two in them, I think they'll do great. They'll be like a floating support with like 70% effective dodge rate, that can do a 2-turn buff, and yeah, I think overall will just look great. So I think definitely a unit you want to use, definitely a unit you want to bust out and use. If you've got them, they're going to help enable your superheroes team. They're just another great floater in situations where evasion's available. If not, then they lose a lot of effectiveness.